This episode is brought to you by Nebula. If you'd like to help support this channel, and the Deprogram, and First Thought, consider signing up for Nebula at the link below. So you just finished doing the political compass test. You probably got a result that looks something like this, and you're wondering what happens next. Hopefully, this video can help. And before we begin, I want to say that I really appreciate what you're doing. Regardless of what your test results are, it's always a good thing when more people get involved in politics. And by taking the test and then clicking on a video like this, you're doing that. But back to why you're here. In this video, what I'm hoping I can do is help you with your homework. Learning about politics involves a little bit of effort, but it can be genuinely fun and rewarding, not to mention useful. The whole point of the next few minutes is going to be finding the way to learn that works for you. I hope you'll keep going down this path, and you're not going to do that if doing it is some massive, boring chore. So what I'm going to show you is a list of different ways to develop your political knowledge and your sense of political identity. And as I go, I'll give you some tricks I've learned along the way not to get bored, and sprinkle in some insights from my own experience. Because it's my video, and I do what I want. Unlike the other things I talk about on this channel, this video is mostly opinions and personal experience, so your mileage will vary. And fair warning if this is the first video you've seen from this channel. I'm a socialist. I'm openly biased, and it's better you know that going in. I'll make an effort to be neutral on general advice and stuff, but I'm also just more knowledgeable on some things, so when I give examples, it's mostly going to be based on what I know and believe. Now, with all that out of the way, it's time to rip off a band-aid. The political compass test kinda sucks. That's unfortunate given how popular it is, but it's best to just come to terms with that. The memes get a lot of people to start learning about politics, and that's a good thing. But I do want to touch on why it's not a great test, as briefly as I can. If you don't want to hear about why it sucks, and you just want different ways to learn about politics, skip to this timestamp. All you're missing is a bit of political theory and why you shouldn't take your result too seriously. Okay, so why does the test suck? Well, for starters, it has a bias. That's normal. It's honestly fine. Every test will. Unfortunately, many people won't know this going in, and the makers of the test even like to present it as neutral.
Essentially, the political compass is free of any agenda.
It's not. A lot of the questions in the quiz are worded in such a way that most people who take it will land in the bottom left quadrant. I'm fine with this quadrant because I'm a big old commie, but this quirk makes the test not super helpful. The very first question, for example, pits transnational corporations and humanity against each other. I don't personally have much of a problem with how this question is worded, but for someone who believes that corporations acting selfishly is the same thing as acting in the best interest of humanity, this wording doesn't even make sense. And answering this question doesn't yield them any insight. But it's not just the questions. The test relies on assumptions you might not agree with. For example, the hard separation of economics and authority, i.e. government, into two distinct, completely separate axes. The horizontal axis is economics, the vertical axis is government.
Take left and right. They're essentially for defining economics. Don't let anyone, least of all politicians, tell you that left and right no longer have meaning. To the contrary, they're the only means of describing actual economic positions. But only economic positions.
This separation comes from a specific school of political thought, liberalism, and not every political ideology thinks in this way. This makes the test somewhat incompatible with different explanations of how the world works, and that means it has important blind spots. Let me be a bit more specific. Here's why a socialist like me might have a problem with this. To those on the bottom right of the political compass, it's authoritarian when the government intervenes in business matters. Even, for example, if that regulation comes from a democratic institution and is designed for the safety and freedom of workers. Governments being considered entirely separate from the realm of economics means their only relationship to business is either intervention or non-intervention, which the test considers a form of liberty. You might be placed on the left side of the compass if you think that the government can protect freedoms that businesses might violate, but this still relies on you thinking of the government as an outside force on the economy. You look at these two axes and you can understand how government affects economics and vice versa, but you can't easily understand them as different parts of the same whole. The test has clearly separated them. To a socialist like me, economics shouldn't and really can't be separated out like this, because businesses are a kind of authority or government. A pretty autocratic government with an unelected leader and laws that apply 8 hours a day. with influence that spills into life outside of these 8 hours too. The relationship of workers to their bosses and production is a matter of politics, at least to me and my way of seeing the world. But the test just doesn't think like that. It represents power and authority as being external to economics. And I know I just got a little technical, and if you're a right libertarian, you might not agree with how I just framed things. That's fine. All I'm really saying is that the test has a framing too, one that's based on a specific political tradition and history. It's not neutral. It's not universal. It's just the norm in the West. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Once you're done with the test, the numbers it spits out aren't super helpful. And most efforts to translate them into labels that human brains can understand, albeit chronically online human brains, aren't super helpful either. You could take another test, like 8 values, but that takes like 30 minutes, and it doesn't deal with the fact that, regardless of what test you take, at the end of the day, it's a self-administered inquiry into your opinions. The test might be able to tell you roughly what you believe in, but what you think may be totally different from what you actually do. And that's really what matters most at the end of the day. Politics isn't so much about what we strongly believe as individuals, or the journeys we go on to develop our political beliefs. Politics is about how a community of mutually dependent people actually organize themselves. And if you strongly believe something but never have the chance to put those beliefs into practice, never talk to anyone else about their needs and wants and how they might conflict, or simply choose not to act on your beliefs, these tests haven't told you what your politics are. They've only told you how you think you think. Ideas don't change the world nearly as much as motivated people do. But enough about tests. What happens next? After taking the political compass test, you'll have a rough idea of where you stand. The closer you are to the left, the more sympathy you might have with socialism. The closer you are to the right, the more you might prefer capitalism. And the lower down you go, the less faith you might have in any kind of authority. The first thing you'll probably want to do is figure out what those words mean. If you want a socialist perspective on that, check out my video right here. Don't feel obligated to watch it, I just put it on screen to seamlessly transition into talking about political content online. Because a lot of people will tell you that reading political theory books is the best way to learn about politics. And while it's true that books written by political scientists, sociologists, economists, philosophers, and the like are the best for detail and accuracy, books are some of the worst ways to get into politics if you're new to political jargon. They can be boring and opaque and long, and there's a million different books. Most people who are told to go read a book as their first foray into politics will try and get tired of it quickly, or not try at all. Those who stick around are the exception. I'll tell you right now, most books that we use on this channel to write videos will not hold your attention, and will often use language that is too technical to appreciate if you haven't been immersed in political thought for a while. Whenever possible, I personally prefer using videos in my own research first, and then going to books to dig a little deeper. I feel no shame in recommending you to watch videos, and you shouldn't feel less smart for doing so. Video is usually just a better format for people being introduced to the topic. And I know that a video maker telling you to watch videos is a little obvious, but if your first thought after taking the political compass test was coming here, this advice probably makes sense for you anyway. But this doesn't mean just watch anything. As a general rule, the best way to approach learning about politics on YouTube is by looking for a few things. The first thing is, does the creator share their sources? Again, this whole video is my opinions, but if a political YouTube channel isn't putting their sources either in the description or on screen, there's reason to be a little skeptical. Their analysis probably relies heavily on common sense, and even though common sense works for a lot of things, it can also be deeply wrong and misleading. Having evidence beyond personal experience, especially scientific evidence, goes a long way towards avoiding logic traps. As always, general media literacy rules apply here. Look for videos that use peer-reviewed articles or books and legit sources. Be a little more cautious with links to forums or websites you don't know. Make sure you're getting a good balance of personal testimony and large sample size science. Find high-quality contradicting arguments. You know the drill. The second thing I'll recommend you look out for is transparency. Bias is almost impossible to avoid entirely, so better to find multiple openly biased sources than rely on a single unbiased source, in my opinion. YouTube is full of political content creators from every part of the political spectrum. Look around at those on the left, the center, and the right, and remember, you're not looking for compromise between everything you see. You're looking for the most trustworthy and accurate information. I'm not gonna do a rule of 3, those are my 2 best tips. Anyway, if you're watching this, chances are the sidebar is full of recommendations already. Maybe start there. If you took a more specific test like 8 values, you can also look up the specific political ideology it assigned you and find videos that way. If you like live streams, there are a ton of people over on Twitch. You've probably already heard of the big names on the platform like Hassan. He does a good job of changing up what he streams so you're not going to get bored. And he often has a pretty topical focus, which helps with connecting old political ideas to relevant stuff happening right now. If audio formats are more your style, there are hundreds of podcasts out there. Some that talk about current events, some that talk about different political philosophies, some that speak about different topics from a specific political position. Scroll through Spotify, ask for recommendations from your friends, and find a topic you like and people whose voice you don't hate. A couple I recommend would be Blowback and, shameless plug, my own podcast, The Deprogram. Also, switch it up. If you get bored of YouTube, go to Twitch. If Twitch is boring, check out a podcast. At this early stage, you probably want to prioritize your own entertainment. Some people's interest in politics is natural, others is born of necessity. And for the rest, it takes a little extra to get you into it. There's a reason Last Week Tonight has an army of comedy writers. That said, videos, podcasts, and live streams can't be your only source of political education forever. There's just limits to what you can do in this format. And as a creator myself, I can promise you that only a fraction of what I learn about can come through effectively in these videos. Also, you might just not like videos, podcasts, and live streams. Maybe you like to learn by being and working with other people. In that case, you might want to look for a political organization near you. Whether it's a mutual aid group, a political party, a reading club, a group of activists, whatever. Find out what's happening in your area, if your city has any upcoming plans you disagree with, and see what local groups are saying about it and if their disagreements line up with your own. Most national organizations representing basically every belief have a local branch and a website explaining what they believe in normal English. They will also almost certainly have a meeting you can attend as an outsider in the next few weeks, maybe even on Zoom so you can just listen. Check out their website, maybe attend a meeting, talk to someone if you feel brave. They will be very welcoming, I promise. This is a great option if your personal preference involves learning with others. It also has the added benefit that you're not just thinking about stuff, you're participating in taking those thoughts into the real world where it can have a tangible impact. This is, after all, what politics is all about. I can tell you from personal experience that joining a socialist organization is one of the absolute best things you can do, both in terms of things you can achieve together and just for your own mental health. If you live in a reactionary place like the US, it can be really lonely and exhausting being the only person in your town, or at least thinking you're the only one, who believes what you do. But when you reach out to CPUSA, or PSL, or FRSO, or DSA, and go to a meeting, suddenly you're like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one. This is a genuine movement. And then by the next meeting, you're on like 3 subcommittees and helping to unionize your local grocery store. It's an amazing feeling to be part of that. To be surrounded by people who believe a better world is possible and are working to make it happen. I've left some links to the big socialist organizations in the description, and I would highly recommend you get involved. In the process of watching videos and joining a political organization, you will undoubtedly be recommended a million books. Here's my advice on that. First, get a library card. They have almost every book for free if your local organizations don't and you can't find one online for cheap. Some books are fun and written for a general audience in mind. Other books are written for a more academic reader. The blurb will usually tell you who the book is for. If a book feels too long, just read the intro and conclusion to start. Or if you hate that, just try to find an interview the author's given about their book on Google. They'll talk about the important stuff, and you can move on to the next one. If the book is old, Wikipedia usually has a halfway decent summary. If the book is very academic, other academics will have published book reviews that are super short in peer-reviewed journals. You'll find a free access version of these articles most of the time on Google Scholar. We're dangerously close to academic research at this point. If you find out that you like doing all this stuff, maybe consider studying political science or sociology at school. Reading these books and articles is what a college education in politics looks like, with the added benefit of a professor who knows the field and other students who enjoy the same things that you do. Fair warning, poli-sci in the United States is still very much steeped in Red Scare rhetoric, so these courses will usually have a pretty anti-communist bent. That doesn't mean don't enroll, it's just something to be aware of. If anything I've said so far feels like too much work, maybe what you need is an online community. It's low commitment, low barrier to entry, and there's a lot of people with a ton of time and passion who want to teach others what they know and love getting questions about it. I personally run a Discord server for my Patreon supporters, as a book club, several discussion channels for people to have somewhat polite arguments, and other channels to share memes and articles and generally interesting tidbits. You don't have to shell out a ton of money to join. Every tier on my Patreon gets access to the Discord, and the lowest tier is literally $1. It's more expensive than Reddit, but it's also not Reddit. And you don't need to be a socialist to join. Just be aware that it is a socialist server, so if you come in yelling right-wing talking points and picking fights, you might get bonked by one of the mods. At this point, there's a good chance you'll either ask yourself or be asked how you label your politics. Word of advice: don't take this too seriously either. How you identify will change as you acquire new knowledge, are exposed to new evidence, meet new people, and experience new things. I went through different phases in my political journey, often trying to find the most specific label for my exact ideology and collecting dashes between different ideologies like they're Pokemon. Today, I prefer just to use the terms communist and socialist pretty interchangeably. The differences between anarchists, MLs, MLMs, and the rest are pretty minor at the end of the day. With an asterisk, of course, but we're not going to get into that here. And the generalizations that people make about these differences are often exaggerated in unproductive ways for an already marginal movement. There are genuinely very few points of friction between most people who identify with socialism, I promise. Places like Twitter encourage and amplify division, but I could go hang out with an anarchist, a Maoist, and a trot in real life and get along just fine. Okay, maybe not the trot. Anyway, that doesn't mean these labels are dumb. Adopting one of these labels is absolutely fine. It's kind of fun, can be helpful, and honestly, it'll probably motivate you to do more research on the label you give yourself, which is good. But as you keep reading, you'll pretty quickly notice that things overlap, and you get to decide how specific you actually want to be about the things that don't. Before I end this video, I want to reiterate something. Make sure you enjoy this stuff. Learning about politics is a really easy way to slip into having a bad time. Things are kind of fucked up, and the more you learn, the more fucked up things there are. If on top of that you hate the process of acquiring new knowledge, learning about politics will not be good for you. So mix it up between videos, books, a community, an organization, or school, and make sure that you enjoy it and stay hopeful. Burning out sucks. I can tell you from personal experience. Take pleasure in this process. Use it as best you can to make the lives of those around you better, and keep going. Humanity is just one big political experiment, so we might as well do our best. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that this video was made possible by Nebula. I'm sure you're all aware of Nebula by now. It's the creator-owned streaming platform that's home to content from all your favorite creators, where we can make the content we really want to make. The three of us at the Deprogram are toying with the idea of making a highly produced Nebula original series in a similar style to Blowback, doing a deep dive into an interesting topic in socialist history. But that will only be possible if we can prove there's enough interest. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can let Nebula know by signing up to show that there's an audience for the series. If you sign up using the link below, you'll get access to Nebula and will be directly supporting your three favorite socialist creators and all our current and future projects. One of my favorite channels is City Beautiful. They've got an original series called Great Cities, where they look at the history of some of the world's most fascinating urban areas. It's a fantastic series, and it was only possible because of Nebula and the support of viewers like you. Help us build our own original series by signing up at the link in the description. The annual plan is just $30 for an entire year. I honestly think that's an amazing deal for all the great content on Nebula. And if you really want to support the creator community and our new project, you've got a really cool limited time opportunity. Through September, Nebula will be offering lifetime memberships. Pay once, get access to Nebula and all its content forever. Lifetime memberships are the best way to support creators like me. Sign up using my code, and 1/3 of the money goes directly to supporting my work, and the rest goes towards making the platform even better and developing amazing Nebula originals like the one we're planning for the Deprogram. Now, a lifetime membership isn't the best deal, an annual plan is. So if you're looking for the best price, definitely go with the annual. Lifetime is about supporting the creators and helping us make bigger and better projects today. So if you'd like to help support our work and get access to the streaming platform built and owned by the creators, sign up for Nebula using my link below. It really does help support me and educational creators all across YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can watch my other content by following the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.